It's that time again. It's time to take a look at what's new and cool in Microsoft 365. Are you ready? Greetings, my fellow YouTubers. How are you today? Well, I hope. Hey, welcome to the channel, especially if this is your first visit. I really do appreciate you dropping by. And I gotta say, for all of you who have subscribed, you guys are an absolute bunch of stars and not far away from 54,000 now, so absolutely fantastic. I can't thank you enough, by the way. Now, if you haven't subscribed, bump that subscribe button up there, ring that bell, and you'll be notified of new videos and postings, and you won't miss a thing on your learning journey. Okay, now on this episode, I thought I would take a look at what's new and cool in Microsoft 365 and Azure Active Directory for March and April 2023. So there are absolutely tons of new things coming out, and this is by far not an exhaustive list. So I'll squeeze in as many things as I can, and definitely things that you definitely want to take a look at and pay attention to. All right, now questions, comments, get them down below. I love those as always. And if you enjoy the video, then please bump the like button up there. It really does make a difference. I think so. Without any further ado, I think we'll jump in, we'll take a look at these new features, and I'll come back at the end and we'll draw some conclusions. All right, you enjoy. Well, there's no denying it, the world is currently going through a fifth industrial revolution, and that revolution is all about AI, or artificial intelligence. Now, you may be familiar with ChatGPT and the fact that Microsoft have now integrated, or will be integrating very shortly, into something called Microsoft Copilot. And Copilot is your personal assistant. So whether you're creating an email invitation, whether you're sending a message, it will create suggestions for you, which I think are absolutely amazing. Of course, it may not be absolutely perfect. You can go in, you can customize it, you can edit it, but the fact is that it's going to give you some serious ideas where maybe in the past you may have struggled. Now, as well as the likes of Microsoft Outlook, you can also use it to create things like awesome PowerPoint presentations. So create me a 20-slide presentation for a birthday party, for example. And again, you can choose the type of, so is it going to be fun? Is it going to be a business? What type of template do you want me to use? And you can see with the click of a button, off it goes, and it creates this fabulous looking presentation for me, which is really awesome. Now, of course, you can configure that. You can then go into the slides and you can then change the presentation. For example, you can change the facts, the information. So for example, if Tasha's got any accomplishments and so on here. So in addition to PowerPoint, of course, you may also want to make notes about any party invitations. Again, ChatGPT, or I should say our Copilot, will take care of that as well for you. So it will give you lots of ideas on things like a party plan. It will generate a to-do list. And from that, of course, I can then create things like invitations. I can request more details, and it will create the whole kind of invitation email, whether it's an email or whether it's a letter. In addition, it will also keep tabs on things like costings as well, and it can help you plan for costings by using products like Microsoft Excel. Of course, if you share this information with colleagues, you can also keep that updated with the likes of Microsoft Loop as well, which is awesome. Now, in addition, of course, wording invitations can be really, really simple, and creating emails from those invitations is a cinch with Copilot in Microsoft 365. So I can simply send emails out in Outlook, and it will make some suggestions, and I can either accept that or reject it. And the cool thing about Copilot is it's available on any and every device. So if you're using Microsoft mobile devices here, like Outlook in here, or Microsoft Office on the go, you'll be able to dictate your request to Microsoft Copilot, which is absolutely amazing. So Copilot, I think, is revolutionary, and I think it's definitely going to change the way we do business. Now, my second area of interest is in the new Microsoft Intune Admin Center. So yes, Endpoint Manager is gone and Intune is back again. And we've seen a large number of updates here in the last few weeks. So first up then, if you go into devices here, you can now see that not only do we have the usual suspects, but also Chrome OS is now in preview. So if you're using the ever increasingly popular Chrome, you can now take advantage of that here, as well as also various incarnations of Linux here as well. So you can now enroll those straight within Microsoft 365 in the Intune Admin Center. Now, one of the most exciting aspects of Intune is that the Intune Suite will now feature a whole bunch of new tools and functionality, which I'm super excited about. So we have tools like endpoint privilege management, we have VPN through mobile application access, and you can also deliver support with remote help, which is super cool. So the first of those is endpoint privilege management. And as an administrator, there's nothing more frustrating than having to give users local admin access if they want to install applications. So with that in mind, there are a few things that we can do. So the first of those is if I come into the admin center here, we can have a look at the endpoint privilege management tool. And what this does, it allows us to give just-in-time access to users so that they can install their applications without the frustration. So it's easy to do this. We simply go into the profile and instead of assigning the user admin permissions, we can assign them user permissions. But you can use just-in-time access. So you can see that normally, if you just say a user would need admin access, they would get blocks. And this is particularly useful, of course, if you've got ransomware or some other kind of malware. But what you can do here is you can now delegate access, but for a specified amount of time. So not only are you giving just enough administration, but you're also delivering it just in time as well, which is super cool. And you can specify whether it's user defined or whether it's admin defined. So for the user can simply go into the application, open the application, and you can see that they can open it for a certain amount of time, which is absolutely fantastic. So I think this is going to be a super useful feature. Now, the other thing that you can also do is you can assign a permission where the user has to request access. So if you don't want to assign it for just in time, you can do it where the user can request access, and this feature will be coming out shortly. Now, my second favorite feature, and this is awesome by the way, is something called Tunnel for MAM, or Mobile Application Management. So in the past, if you wanted to have a VPN tunnel, you may have used a corporate device, and this meant users having two devices. But with Tunnel for MAM, what this essentially does is you can assign an application through a tunnel. So when the user opens up the application on their mobile device, for example, in this case, this app here, what this will do is it will generate a tunnel through the internet, which is a secure virtual private network. And this is absolutely fantastic. So to configure this, you can simply go into the configuration policy for the app, and you can assign this a VPN tunnel. And I think that is an absolute game changer. Now, another piece of fantastic software is this one. This is Advanced Endpoint Analytics. Now, one of the issues that I have as a support person is if there's an app crash or there's a problem or a user's having an issue, often the IT support can be the last person to know. But it would be nice to have a little bit of insight before things really start getting out of control. And many of us are now using tools like ServiceNow. So you can see here that we can see that there is a potential issue that's arisen. And I can go into this and have a look at this, and you can see that it fully integrates with things like the ServiceNow dashboard. So I've got a user here called Steve Dispenza, who's a rather troublesome user, and he's had a number of issues that he's been calling about. So again, there's a number of similar incidents, and these have kind of spiked. So this will now fully integrate with the ServiceNow dashboard. And finally, the last piece of help that you can give a user, of course, is remote help. Remote help is a fantastic tool to allow your users to connect. You can share things like the user's desktop so that you can go in and help them. You can also give them notes. You can check if a device isn't compliant and so on. And this prevents things like malicious remote desktop service companies. So first of all, it checks that you are a genuine Intune user first. So once you've been authenticated, you'll then be able to go ahead and help the user. And what's left is a very happy user indeed. So remote help, I think this is an awesome feature, and this is going to do really well. Up next of my new improvements can be found here in Microsoft Purview. Purview continues to amaze me every time. There's so many cool new features. And first of all, if I go into information protection labels here, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to create a new label. And I'm going to call this label YouTube Classified. And I'm going to copy this label. I'll copy it. So let's just add these fields in. And I'm going to put that display text in for users. And I'm going to click on next. Now, you can see here that it continues to be improved. So now, rather than just having labels which were defined for data, now Microsoft have broken these down into separate areas. So when we talk about items, they can now include files, so individual files. So for example, Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint documents. They can also include individual emails, and they can include meetings as well. Please note, however, that you do need Teams Premium for some of these features, so just be aware of that. Groups and sites, of course, this was added recently because previously it was available, but just simply through PowerShell, so that's really nice. Also in Preview, we've got schematized data, so if you're using SQL databases, if you're connecting things like connectors to things like Amazon Web Services and so on, then you can assign labels to that as well. So in here I can apply or remove encryption, and I can also do things like content marking and also protect Teams meetings. So if you had purchased Teams Premium, then this checkbox would be available to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click these two checkboxes and I'm going to click on that. And the first thing I want to do is configure the permissions. So do I want to assign permissions now or let my users choose their permissions themselves? So I'm going to choose to assign the permissions. I'm not going to bother with user access to the content expires because I don't want it to expire. This is really useful. So if you're using things like OneDrive for Business, or you're using things like SharePoint document libraries in Teams and so on, you can actually restrict offline access to a particular item. So if you're in a Microsoft team, for example, you would not be allowed to download an item that's been labeled with this. I can also assign the permissions here, and I can assign it to all users, authenticated users, specific users and groups, and so on. I'm going to do this for all users, and I'm going to choose the permission that I want. So in terms of permissions, of course, you can choose co-owner, co-author. These are your different SharePoint permission roles. You can even custom these and create your own as well. But in this case, I'm going to choose the co-author. I'm going to go ahead and save that, and I'm going to click on save. Do I want to, and you can see that's gone in there as well. Double key encryption, by the way, if your client supports it. If not, if you're using an older client, you might find that it doesn't support that. Do you want to do auto labeling? So this integrates data loss prevention policies in place here. So data loss prevention, I like to refer to it as data leakage prevention. So in here you can create a data loss prevention policy and essentially assigns a label to it. So that's kind of a cool feature. So in here, do I want to define protection for groups and sites? So yes, I do. And this is really cool. You can also configure the external sharing settings and conditional access settings in here now. So in terms of the sharing, of course, do you want the data to be public, private, or none? So again, I could say, yeah, with this particular label, I want it to be private. And if I click on the checkbox here, this will allow group owners to share with the content with people outside the company. But in this case, because it's confidential, I'm going to say, no, I don't want to do that. The other thing that we can do here is you can also configure things like sharing and conditional access. So again, I can select here and say, okay, in terms of sharing, you can see that it's picked up the sharing settings from SharePoint Document Library. Now, remember, we're talking about potential items, individual items here. So if a SharePoint document library, let's say, was new and existing guests, well, anything with this particular label, you might say, actually, no, only people within the organization, I'm going to allow this. And you can also integrate it with conditional access as well. This is great. So again, you can actually block item to a particular item. You can allow only limited web-only access, and you can also allow full desktop access here. So it's integrating it with the likes of conditional access. That absolutely rocks. Okay, so do you want to do auto labeling? I'm not using that one at the moment. I can go ahead and I can click onto that. That's really nice. So once you've finished the label, of course, the next thing is, do you want to publish the label or do you want to create a new label policy? The problem is if you create a new policy every time, you might end up with 50 labels in 50 policies. So it's a bit confusing. So what I'm going to do is I've already created a policy here called Project Obsidian. And I'm going to click on Add. And you can see that I've got a number of options in here already. And I can say, yeah, that's fine. I want to add to this. So now if I go to the label policy here and go into Project Obsidian, one of the things that you can do at any point, of course, I can edit the labels. So if I want to remove any of these labels, I can do that quite happily here. Now, just to show you, we also have a new feature here. So this is kind of cool. You can now assign admin units. They're currently in preview. So you can add in an admin unit here. So I can say, yeah, do I have an admin unit in Bergen or in Oslo? So wherever your admin unit is. And of course, your admin unit basically allows administrators in Bergen or Oslo to administer their own users, their own groups, and their own devices. And that's a really cool feature. So now I can assign a label or the policy to that admin unit so that it becomes available. And again, you might have, for example, in the Bergen office, this is where you might do all your financials, for example. So it's great to see that in there. Okay, so again, do I want to publish that? Again, I've already created this at the moment, so it would just be duplicating it. So like I said, you could publish that label, add those labels into that policy, and that then gets pushed out. Now, it can take about an hour before those labels come through. But when they do come through, users can essentially go into Microsoft Word, and of course they can go into the sensitivity labels, and those sensitivity labels are not simply available in the documents anymore, but they're also available in, for example, Teams and Groups, and also websites. So I can simply now go into, let's say, my Teams and Groups, go into my active Teams and Groups here. I've got my Aberdeen HQ here, And you can now see that in here, we also have not just details, but if you go into the settings, you've now got the privacy labels in here, which is absolutely awesome. Okay, so there we go. Labeling, really nice to see that information protection has been improved. The next thing that I want to show you, I'm going to come into Teams and Groups, and I'm going to come into Active Teams and Groups. Now, obviously here we have all our teams and groups, and there has been a few new additions here. You'll notice that we have something now called policies. Now, as we know, groups that are Microsoft Teams, you can set different policies in Microsoft Teams. So it's really nice to see that rather than having to go into multiple portals, I can now come into the portal here and you can see exactly what that policy is and how it's being impacted in my organization. I actually wonder if the Teams integration admin settings are going to be more deeply integrated into this single portal, which that would be an interesting addition actually. So this is really nice. You can come in here, I can come in, I can view all my different policies here. And you can also change them. You can see which users are affected by this particular policy. You can customize it, and you can also customize these policies as well. Now, you'll notice here that at the moment you can't create the policies. You can still only create those policies within Microsoft Teams. But again, it's really, really handy to see those policies here in Microsoft 365 Groups. Now, on the subject of Microsoft 365 Groups and Teams, of course, new features come and they go, and it's really nice to see that if you go into the settings, we've seen some new enhancements here. So again, I've mentioned the file sharing before. The fact that we can now directly assign a sensitivity label to both groups, teams, and websites is absolutely awesome. Now, do remember though, it's only assigning a sensitivity label to the group. You can still assign additional sensitivity labels to the content within the group as well. Now, because this particular group has been extended to become a team, you can also manage the team's channels. For example, what can users do, what can they not do, and so on. And you can also view things like the team's conversations here as well. You can also create channels. So again, this is great. I can create additional channels here without having the need to go within to Microsoft Teams. And you can also control all different aspects of the membership. You can also view the website in SharePoint Teams. You can go into Microsoft Teams, and you can also email the group here as well. So it's really nice, and we're starting to see this much tighter integration into Microsoft 365. So there you have it, just some of the new and cool features for March and April 2023. I really hope you enjoyed them. Now, of course, that was just my selection. I'm sure there's loads more out there. And if there were topics in there that you thought, wow, I would really like to know more about those, Andy, then just pop them down below along with your comments, because I love those as well. Now, if you haven't subscribed, of course, bump that subscribe button up there, ring that bell, and you'll be notified of new videos and postings. And it would be great to have you on board as a subscriber. I really do appreciate it. All right, that's it for now. You stay safe, and I will see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Hey, thanks so much for dropping by today. Here's a couple of videos that you may enjoy, and while you're here, go ahead, click on the subscribe button and you won't miss out.